Hi there, I'm going to get started. This is my Wakelet 101 webinar in the LIU Learn On series. This is the last webinar of Friday, and we have a very small group with us today, so I have left the chat open if you want to go ahead and chat away. You can access this webinar via this short link here. If you type it in, it's bit.ly/LIU Wakelet. Capital letters do count in a bit.ly, so if you type that in, you should be able to access this entire slide deck. It will also be on our website with all of the recorded webinars once they are finished. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Nicole Bond. Here at Lincoln Intermediate Unit, I am the Educational Technology Specialist. This is our team, which has put together all of these webinars, as well as contributed to all of our LearnOn website as well. So if you need anything, this is the team you need to reach out to. If you need anything specific to Wakelet, you can contact me. So just a couple of the webinar meeting norms. Your microphone and camera are off and disabled due to the potential large size of the attendee group. However, I've left the chat open because it is a slightly smaller group. That way you can just post questions in chat or in the Q&A. Either one works. Again, the Q&A or raise your hands. And I just want to remind you at the end that this will send you out to the Act 48 credit link. I will also try to throw it into the chat if I possibly can. So just a couple of the changing expectations for online learning that we like to go over here at the beginning. These are our best practice suggestions. The first one is less is more, and that it is important to prioritize and balance what you are choosing to include. And actually, I think Wakelet is a great way to kind of do that prioritization and also work in a little bit of choice for students depending on how you want to use Wakelet. I've been telling everyone probably the last 2 weeks, less is more, less is more. Take what you thought you were going to teach the rest of the year, cut it in half, and let's be honest, cut it in half again. That's how you need to prioritize. Additionally, just as a reminder, because you can put video into Wakelet, is that when you use video, if at all possible, include your face. That's why you're seeing my lovely face today. And if possible, also keep the length to no more than 6 minutes. If you have a video that you need to do that is longer than 6 minutes, then I would really suggest chunking it into smaller bits, into 6-minute bits, or even smaller than that, 2 to 3 minutes is a great way to do it. When you possibly can, it is important to be absolutely clear in what your objectives and expectations are for an assignment. If a student understands why they are doing it, they are more likely to do it. If it's just posted there and they're just supposed to do it with no particular purpose in mind, they may not feel inspired to complete your assignments. When possible, try to identify the time it takes to complete a task as well. When a student knows that something maybe is only going to take 5 minutes, they might be able to do it right when they see it, or they might want to prioritize their time a little bit differently when they know about how long an assignment or a task is going to take. Also, try to organize and sequence your instructions whenever possible. Offering checklists is fabulous both for students and parents. Then it's very clear and obvious what needs to get done and when it needs to get done. So our outcomes for today. I am going to identify what you can accomplish with Wakelet as a tool. So I have the slide deck and I have a number of placeholders in the slide deck. I am going to go out to Wakelet and probably spend most of the time on the website clicking around so you can see what you can do. But I'm also going to show you how educators and students can use Wakelet to curate and share ideas. So essentially, Wakelet is a curation tool. It's really meant to curate resources so that they're easily shared between different people, or so that you can collaborate and curate resources together. And I feel like as educators, a lot of times what we are doing, especially when we move to online learning, is curation. It's not necessarily that direct instruction piece that we were so possibly used to doing in our classroom, but saying, here's a lot of resources, I want you to do something with them. I want you to pick parts of them. So when it comes to the idea of choice, I think Wakelet's a great resource for helping curate ideas and resources and offering your students that choice in a way that keeps it contained in one location and doesn't have them necessarily clicking out too much into too many places. So good old Wakelet. So it's a digital curation tool and it's pretty versatile. You can curate and just share or collaborate and share. So all you really have to do as an educator is create your account and then you'll click on a button that says create a new collection. So I'm going to go up here. You'll see my account. This is what my dashboard looks like. I've got a couple that I've already created in here, but right here's where I would create a new collection. And as you see, it comes up pretty blank. I can title it. I can add a cover image, or I can leave it alone. I can upload it from my own. I can choose from a library. I can add a background. I like to add a background. I think a lot of times I overlook this. So I'm just gonna throw in a quick background in there. Oh, look, oh, that one's colorful. I like that one. So what that does is it puts it back here so that my board has a little bit of color. I can do something here too. We're going for really loud and bright today. How about that? I can also move that to a half, or I can get rid of it altogether if it's just a little too much for everyone. All right, right here is where I start adding and curating. So if I hop back over to my Wakelet slide deck, this is where my curation list is. So if I hit plus, you're gonna see all of these different options for what I can put into my Wakelet. So I can paste a URL from anywhere. I can put any link in here. I can add text. So if I want to add directions and say, hey, I want you to do this, and then this, and then this, and then I want you to go over here and do this, or please view the following, or maybe I put my objectives here first before I give the students the options of what they're going to go and visit. So adding text is fabulous. You can also add a YouTube link. When you add a YouTube link, it will embed the video in here, and when students click on it, it will take them to a slightly different page, but it will not take them to YouTube. So they will not go on the kind of click fest of what YouTube becomes. Sometimes you click on one thing and then 3 hours later you've clicked yourself out of wherever you were supposed to be and you are watching videos with lots of cats. So this is nice that you can embed the video and it doesn't take them out beyond really Wakelet. You can embed tweets as references, your own bookmarks. You can put images in here, whether they're pictures that you take through your webcam or pictures you have saved elsewhere. You can upload a PDF. So that means if you have a worksheet that you want students to look at, or maybe even something that you want them to read that's in PDF form, you can put that in there too. You can bring stuff in straight from Google Drive. I would just note with Google Drive, always make sure your sharing settings are set to what you want them to be set at. So if you were expecting students to log into Google Drive to access it within your domain, then you set that setting anyone within your domain. If you want anybody to be able to see it as long as they can click on the link, then you'll do that as well. Now, Wakelet is not Google Classroom, so the students can't be typing and then submitting and that sort of thing. It's a curation tool. So a lot of times the pieces like that you put in there, the expectation wouldn't be that students would type in it. They would be using it as a reference for reading or to going to something else. Same thing with OneDrive that you can embed from OneDrive. And Flipgrid is also partnered with Wakelet. So one of the cool things that I really like about this is that I don't have to go out to Flipgrid. I can actually video myself right into the Wakelet. So I could do an introduction video right here at the beginning if I wanted to. Now, hopefully I don't break the internet with doing a video within a Zoom video. It might take us a second, but there we go. Now you get to see me twice. A little bit of a lag, but you'll see it has photo stickers, board, drawing, text, etc. Like, for instance, if I needed to really do something, I could do something with a board in here. I have video options. I can do my screen recording. So maybe I wanted to do a screencast of what I wanted my students to do with directions. I can put that right into the Wakelet. I don't have to go to Flipgrid and then link it in. I have it right in here, which is excellent. If I just wanted to do an audio clip instead, I could do that. So you'll notice Flipgrid's in here. We did have a Flipgrid webinar, I believe on Tuesday. So if you go back to Tuesday morning, you'll be able to see a full Flipgrid webinar if you want to know the details. It's set to giving me about 10 minutes. So I can post a video of myself saying hi to my students and giving them specific instructions where they get to see my face, social emotional component, right into Wakelet. So that's just an idea of what you can put in there. So there's lots of different resources that you can put in here. Once I've made my Wakelet full of resources, and now what I'm gonna do is I'll show you up here. I can do enable copy. So what this will allow is anyone who comes across my Wakelet can make a copy of this Wakelet, and then it's theirs. Just like if they were to make a copy of a Google Doc, and then it's theirs, and they can add to it, take away from it, et cetera, modify it, and it's only theirs. The same thing here. They can do that with the Wakelet. They make a copy of it, and maybe they find their own things and collect it and keep it, and it's theirs. I don't get to see what they did to it unless they share it with me. So that's an option. I like to do that a lot of times when I'm doing an education resource that I think other educators might want to reuse so that they can easily make a copy and repurpose it and use it themselves. One of the last things I'm going to show you in this webinar is actually a piece that I'm going to share with you so that you can reuse it if you would like to. So that's one of the initial options in here. You'll notice up here, and this is something that's happened actually in the last 2 weeks, is that it has automatically started saving your changes. So I do want to point that out. It used to be you have to click save. Now, as you're working, it saves for you, which is great. It makes me a lot less nervous. I have lost some things because I forgot to save them. Over here is my privacy settings. So right now I have this set privately so that I am the only person who can see it. This is great if you're just curating some links that you want to go back to and you're treating it kind of like a bookmark repository, but that's not what I think the real power behind Wakelet is. I really think public and unlisted are where the power is. So enlisted allows me to just send a link and then anyone who has that link can see it. And then public means anyone can search it and find it within the Wakelet repository, which I'll show you a little more of that later. So I'm going to list it as unlisted. That means that all I have to do is send my students a link and they'll be able to access this. I'm just going to go in here and add text. So welcome. Missed you guys. And you'll notice I can even put a link within the text if I wanted to. So I could highlight and throw a link in there if I want to do that. I'm just going to go. You'll notice it's set up like so. I can put a URL. And what I want to point out about the URL is something that's kind of nifty. You'd think, okay, well, that's it, whatever. And it's great because it's kind of a teacher and childcare worker shout out today for Google. I can go to edit and I can change everything that's in here. So this might not at first seem super powerful, but it's really powerful because I can put in here step 1. Search for information on llamas. Find 3 websites and 1 video about llamas that shares information about how long they live and what they eat. Save those URLs to share in a Wakelet. So I can type my instructions right in here on this link and it's there. And then I can continue adding steps. And you'll notice I can kind of move them around this way. There's also something called an easy reorder mode where I can just drag things where I want to. It makes it really nice if I change my mind about the order I want to do or how I want to do something. So I just wanted to point out easy reorder mode. You can also change the layout. I like the stream layout when I'm doing lessons with students, but you might want to think about how you could use other layouts. Compact will keep all of those images a little tighter and smaller, and it's more of a tile and a full description. So if you really want the students to focus on the text, you might choose compact. Grid, they're not going to have the descriptions quite as much, and mood is more like visual and moving. So I really like the layout I have, the media view, because it creates a nice sequence. And I think sometimes when our students are online and maybe you're just moving to online, that's something that they can struggle with is what order do I do this in? Where do I start and where do I finish? So I like to keep it that layout, but it might be something you want to play with depending on what it is you're doing with your students. Or maybe even if you have them designing their own Wakelets, have them play with it and figure out how they would like to do it. So like this would be a great way to curate art examples. So maybe you would have students submit Wakelets that they've created of examples of Impressionist art. So just when you start to think about, hey, if I have the students creating and collecting, or if I'm creating and collecting for them, both of those are choices with Wakelet because you can actually collaborate, and I'm going to show you that next. So I'm going to go in here and hit done, even though this is a very small Wakelet and I don't have much on it. So you'll see this is what it looks like to the outside when I'm finished. What I like is it will read
interesting ideas,
the text for students. So if I put a lot of text in, it will read in certain sections. So there's a read mode that's in beta, so that might be a little glitchy, but FYI, it will read all of this too. So I want to put that in there. It keeps an idea of your views and your items, etc. Up here, I have a new set of menus to choose from now that I've already published it. The first one is contributors. So once I click there, I can invite contributors. So if this were a lesson that I was working on and maybe I was collaborating with my learning support teacher, I could invite her as a contributor. She would need to make an account in Wakelet, but then she could start, adding her own resources or changing the wording a little bit for me. Or if I wanted my reading specialist to come in and dabble and change some things, I could do that for collaborative reasons. Or if I'm a student and I have my students working in here, I could have them sharing their Wakelet with each other and collaborating together on a group project where I'm asking them to curate information about llamas, to give you an example. I can do it through a code. There's an easy copy link or a QR code. I can do it via email. You can start to follow people. It gets kind of social media-esque. You just have to be careful about it. And I can manage contributors. So what it'll do is list my contributors, and I can kind of determine what I would like them to be able to do or not able to do, and I can kick them out of my board if I'm the admin and I own the board. So sometimes what I've seen some teachers do is they become admins on boards and create the boards for students and then invite them as contributors so that they can see what they're doing while they're collaborating together as a team. So just kind of a management thought. Like if you create the Wakelets ahead of time and then invite the students as teams, you have 1, control over who's on what team, so you can organize your groups. And 2, you have admin rights, so you have the ability to go in there and manage who's in it and who isn't in it right from this panel. So that's contributors. Share. You'll notice that I can share this directly to all of your social media outlets, but I can also share it directly to Google Classroom. So if I have my classroom set up, if I click on that, I can go right in there and boom, there's my Wakelet posted right to Google Classroom with resources for my students. This is Remind. I can also use Teams, or I can share it with a short link, which I will be doing later in the slideshow. I have an example of one I'm going to share with you with a short link. So those are all options. If I were looking at maybe a Wakelet that wasn't mine and I wanted to copy it because I'm like, that's a really good idea, I'm going to move that around and change it and tweak this and add these instructions, or maybe I'm going to change everything so that I have steps listed where it wasn't there. I can go to copy and create my own collection off of it. So I'll come up with my own title and it'll make a copy of it for me. And that's only if that's enabled. So I enabled it in this one just to show you. And then lastly, I can do a PDF export if you wanted to print it out for some reason. That means you lose the interactivity of links and videos. I can embed it. So if I'm maybe using Schoology and I want to use the embed code, I can use the embed code for that reason. Analytics, Notify lets you tweet it out, and I can change the visibility and delete the collection from here as well. So right here's the edit. So if I wasn't happy and I want to add something to it, I can go right into my edit. So those are really the basics of what it looks like. What I'm going to do is go back to my home because I want to show you a more comprehensive board. So I will share the short link with you on this particular board. But what I did here is I took the Oreo template that we had shared in LearnOn, which was done by Allison Yang. She did a document called an online wayfinding document that we've been using and referencing and saying this is a great way for you to set up lessons if you need to. And I set it up like a template so that there's a section for intro video here if you want to use Flipgrid. Yes, Rebecca, I can absolutely talk to you about the difference between this and Padlet. And you'll see I have a little introduction here, standards address, objectives, success criterion, responsibility, what I'm asking them to do, steps. Those are just fake steps. You could put your own in there. Expectations, etc. Organization, checklist. This is where you put a checklist for students to double check that I do everything. And then I put a link for sources. So you can make a copy of this and just type in your own information, and it already has kind of the lesson plan format in there walking you through. And I will give you a copy of it. It is in my Wakelet. So to answer your question with Padlet, Padlet to me is more of a corkboard. Padlet, you can embed links into Padlet. You can put video into Padlet. Padlet doesn't have a direct integration with Flipgrid, so I feel like that's a bonus. I feel like with Wakelet, I have a slightly different, like I can really control my contributors a little bit differently in here. Like it's really an invite only sort of situation unless I open it up and share the link. But once I share the link, that doesn't mean my students can come in here and type. That means they have access to my resources. In Padlet, when I share the link, I can set it so that they only have access to my resources, or I can share it so that they can type. So I think that's a little bit different. Padlet, additionally, in the way that it's like a corkboard and that you have posts of blocks that you can kind of put across it, it can be a little more scattered. So I feel like it's harder for a student to go step by step. This is what I'm supposed to do. So when we're talking about that piece where parents and students are like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do and in what order, I can very clearly delineate what I'm asking them to do here. And I think because of that, I like this better for that particular piece. I like Padlet when I want a whole bunch of people brainstorming in a spot and commenting on each other's stuff for that interactivity. I like this for the curation of resources and sharing of them, whether I'm the one curating it or I'm asking my students to curate resources and share them, because I like the fact that they can put it in an order that I think is nicer and neater in a Wakelet than a Padlet. I hope that helps answer your question. So other things I want to show you about Wakelet while I'm in here. So that's my Oreo Wakelet template. Again, I'm going to share that with you in my slide deck here in a second. What I want to point out is something called Surf School up here. This just appeared recently. So Surf School is Wakelets that are specifically designed for education. So this brings me joy. Up here at the top is personal use. So like Wakelets with resources for lesson planning, for professional development, just someone collecting resources, an educator's portfolio Wakelet. Those are great. And then as you scroll down, resources to share with your students, resources to share with teachers, newsletters. I've seen people use Wakelets as newsletters, so that would be another way to think about using it that maybe I wouldn't use a Padlet for, because I could design it like a newsletter. I have all of the ability to add all those backgrounds and change the title, and I have the ability to type in blocks, add any picture I want to, put it in an organized fashion, and then send the link as a newsletter if I wanted to. Or embed it. So that's another way to think about it. This could be, you know, your weekly newsletter that you send out. You can even embed your Flipgrid video saying, hope everybody's doing well this week. This is what's on the agenda. Down here, you'll see collaboration. So the idea of class research projects, classroom. Some people do use it for classroom discussion, though personally, I don't feel like this is the tool I would use for that, etc. We've got Wakelet for students. Now, the one thing I do want to note is that to use Wakelet, they have to create an account. So they really should be 13 or over for COPA purposes. That's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. They need to be 13 or older to be able to use this particular piece for collaboration if you have them working together to collaborate and come up with a tool. A way around that is to have the students submit the information to you and you put it into the Wakelet using your account, and then share the Wakelet out. They can look at the Wakelet, that's okay. But once they log in, that's where you have issues, when they're logging in and starting to create their own. So just keep that in mind. If you're using this with students under 13, you can share information, build your own Wakelet and share it with them for them to go through a lesson, but they shouldn't have to log in. So keep that in mind. Additionally, I do want to show you the showcase, because it's not necessarily teacher focused, but you'll notice when you go into it, there's still a lot of teacher stuff in there, because a lot of educators are using Wakelet really heavily right now to share ideas and curate things. So like at home with preschoolers, it's just a list of resources for being at home with preschoolers. Technology for inclusive classrooms, teams in the class notebook, Flipgrid at a Wakelet, stay home STEM, podcast PD. So you'll notice a lot of these are very education-based, because it's being used very heavily by educators to curate ideas and resources for each other and for their students. So if you're curious, this is one other place to go. And you can also just use the search bar. So this is the showcase. I'm going to go back here. Should come up. You'll notice that I can just search. So if I'm looking for something in particular, like maybe I'm looking for something having to do with literature. It's going to show me collections having to do with literature, hopefully. So there we go. Again, you'll notice that a lot of these resources are teacher-based. Even though Wakelet is open platform for anyone to use, it's being used heavily by education. So those are some of the resources. To backtrack, you'll see that there's also an app. You can embed it. You can also get an extension for Chrome so that you can easily throw things into Wakelet if you're looking to kind of enhance where you're going with it. You can create public profiles and follow specific people. So as you are perhaps digging around in Surf School or Showcase, you might want to do that. Because then you'll have resources. Maybe somebody you follow is a librarian or is a fellow math teacher sharing resources, so that whenever they post something, you'll get a notification, hey, they shared more resources for this piece, or they shared a lesson plan for this piece. What I did notice was in some of the Surf School and some of the Showcase were options for that, where lesson plans were already sort of created, where you could, like, so interactive lesson. This is an example of a way to set up an interactive lesson in a Wakelet. So after completing the task below, you will have a complete set of notes for this. And it's a whole bunch of resources having to do with, so there's a YouTube video. And it's all sequenced. So it's that sequence piece that I really think is the game changer with Wakelet, is that you can just link it all and sequence it like that, that you may not be able to do with certain other tools. And you'll see that she's made it so that I can make a copy. I could make a copy of this and make it my own if this was the particular piece I wanted to work on. So just kind of going back to my slide deck, I have all of your information here about how to edit your links, the enabling of copying, and who gets to see it, as well as how to collaborate and share and embed. So a couple of the ways that you can use Wakelet in the classroom. So I've talked about how to use it as a kind of step-by-step lesson. You can also use it as a choice board. So I might introduce it and say the objective is to learn how to do X, Y, and Z, and then say choose one of the 4 links provided, and then link the 4 links and have students choose which one they want to read or interact with, and then give them the next step. So there's a lot of power in that, because I can sequence out my choices and be like, choose from these 4, and be like, choice 1, choice 2, because I can go in and edit the text that's with the link before I send it out. I could also use it, as I said, like a newsletter board. I could have students submit resources, articles, videos, and then populate it myself and send it out. Like, hey, we were talking about spiders last week. Here are all the resources you guys submitted. And I could even kind of identify students in there. Like, this is Jim's, this is Sarah's, et cetera, et cetera. And then for students over 13, I can actually create a board and kind of push it out so that all of them collaborate to build resources and submit them to create their own kind of lesson. I think that would be really an engaging activity, to have them build their own, send it out, and then have students interact and look at each other's boards and what they collaborated and came up with. Or you can have the whole class collaborate on a board. This is the link to the Oreo Wakelet template that I shared with you. So I'm gonna exit out and throw this in the chat, should you like to use it. Now, there's been a new update on Zoom, so if that doesn't show up as a link, you should be able to highlight it and copy and paste it if you would like to use it and throw it into something else. And then lastly, I went over the Surf School, which has a lot of education ideas. So I'm going to pause for a moment. If anyone has any particular questions they would like to ask me about Wakelet, I'll give you a second to ask any questions, or if you'd like me to go back and show you something again so you can see it kind of redone. Okay, since I don't see any questions coming up, I'm just going to remind you that we are adding webinars for next week. Not quite as fast and furious as they have been lately, but there will be some webinars next week on a couple of tools. I know we're going to be looking, I believe, at Nearpod. I think we're looking at Edpuzzle. We're going to do a deep dive into Zoom security features and tips and tricks in Zoom. We're going to, I think, look at Formative. If you've heard me talk about Formative before, I'm going to talk about that one. And we may even do a review of best practices and where we kind of are with best practices right now. So that schedule is already there on the scheduled webinar section of our LearnOn website if you want to go there and check it out. You do not have to register ahead of time currently, but the Act 48 link is still there, and you will still be able to get Act 48 credit for all of those, as well as this one, if you go to learnon.iu12.org. We really appreciate any feedback that you can give us. If you do the LearnOn web eval, I will throw that also into the chat, as well as the Act 48 for those of you in attendance, if you would like. And the last piece I would say is that if you have any questions or concerns, or you're curious, one, I do know that Wakelet is running some of their own webinars. So if you kind of type into Google Wakelet and webinars, those will come up. I did link some of them into that schedule. Just know that we're not offering Act 48 for the ones that they're hosting. Or if you need to, you can totally reach out to me, and I will try to troubleshoot and answer any questions that you have. I really appreciate you guys showing up today, and I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing at school for your students, doing your best to make sure that you're making this remote learning work as best as you can online. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of Friday. Thanks, guys.